So you want to know how I ended up losing everything over one stupid comment? That's the thing about life. You curate the perfect existence, you filter out all the imperfections, and you think you've built a fortress, but you never see the earthquake coming until the designer floor is cracking right under your feet. My name is Alara. I'm 32, and 6 months ago, I had it all. A sprawling 5-bedroom contemporary in the nice part of town, a closet that looked like a boutique showroom, and the kind of financial freedom that meant boredom could be cured with a weekend trip to Napa. Now, I'm sleeping on my sister's lumpy, cat hair-covered couch, working double shifts at a retail job just to afford instant ramen. It's a spectacular fall from grace, all because my husband, Julian, couldn't take a joke. All because he decided that one off-the-cuff remark was worth more than our entire 6-year history. Julian and I had been together for 6 years, married for 4. If you were to cast him in a movie, he wouldn't be the leading man. He's of average height, with warm but unremarkable brown eyes, and the hairline he had in college has begun a strategic retreat from his forehead. He still carried the lingering softness around his middle from his fraternity days. But here's the thing they don't tell you in fairy tales. The prince doesn't always look like a prince. Sometimes he's a genius who can afford to buy you the castle. And Julian was, without exaggeration, a genius. He was an acoustic consultant. It sounds dreadfully dull, I know. I used to think so too. He designed soundscapes. He would walk into a concert hall or a state-of-the-art recording studio and, just by listening, tell you how sound would behave in that space. He'd talk about things like reverberation time, and bass traps and diffuser panels. Major record labels and world-famous musicians flew him across the country, paying him thousands of dollars an hour for his ears. His ears. I never truly understood it. I'd watch him spend days obsessing over the way sound bounced off a particular type of wood versus another. Who cares? But it paid for our house, my Lexus, and my quarterly wardrobe updates. So, I learned to nod and smile. My own job at a high-end boutique, Shimmer, was more of a hobby, a way to fill 20 hours a week and get a generous employee discount. It hardly competed with Julian's income, but he never made me feel bad about it. I'm happy to provide for us, Alara, he'd say. You make our house a beautiful home. And I did. Our home was my masterpiece. My Instagram posts of our minimalist living room, with its Italian leather sofa and custom-built shelving, were shared by 3 different home decor accounts. I was the curator of our perfect life. He was the benefactor. That's how a modern marriage works, right? One person brings home the bacon, the other arranges it beautifully on a platter for all the world to see. That fateful weekend was supposed to be like any other. Julian had a flight to Chicago on Friday morning to consult on a new symphony hall. He wouldn't be back until Sunday night. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I was already texting my girls, Sloane, Quinn, and Anya. The house was mine for the weekend. It was the perfect opportunity for some much-needed girl talk, the raw, unfiltered kind you can only have when there are no men around to get their feelings hurt over a little bit of truth. I spent all of Friday getting ready. I wasn't just cleaning, I was staging. I arranged a charcuterie board that was more art than food, chilled 3 bottles of an expensive rosé that Julian had been saving for some vague special occasion, and adjusted the smart lighting in the living room to a warm, inviting glow that made everyone look flawless. The girls arrived around 7, full of energy and compliments. Alara, this house is literally my dream, Quinn said, running her hand over the cool marble of the kitchen island. It's all Julian's doing, I said with a practiced dismissive wave of my hand. He's the one with the Midas touch. 3 bottles of wine in, we were loud, laughing, and completely uninhibited. That's when Sloane suggested we play the game. It was a silly, drunken tradition where we rated our partners on the typical 1 to 10 scale but with commentary. Anya went first. Her new boyfriend, a CrossFit fanatic, got an 8. Amazing body, but loses a point for talking about his protein intake during dinner. Quinn gave her husband a solid 7. He's got a dad bod now, but he's still cute, and he's an incredible father, total keeper. Then, all eyes turned to me. I swirled the wine in my glass, feeling the warm buzz of alcohol and camaraderie. I was just being honest, that's all. Everyone's honest when they're with their closest friends. Julian? I took a dramatic sip. The girls giggled in anticipation. Oh, God. On a good day, maybe a 5.5. The laughter erupted. Encouraged, I went on. I mean, let's be real. He's not exactly eye candy. And the man can kill a party faster than a fire alarm. He corners people to talk about the acoustic properties of the room they're in. It's excruciating. But he's so successful, Sloane offered, trying to be diplomatic. Oh, completely, I agreed, refilling my glass. His job is as boring as watching paint dry, but the direct deposits are regular. The bank account is a solid 10, so I make it work. It's a trade-off. I might have gone on a little longer. I think I mentioned his receding hairline and how his idea of romance was explaining the sound engineering behind our favorite songs. I was just venting. Everyone needs to vent sometimes. It's healthy. How was I supposed to know? How was I supposed to know his Chicago client had a family emergency, canceling their entire weekend session? How was I supposed to know he'd caught an earlier flight home, wanting to surprise me? That he'd come in, heard the shower running upstairs, and assumed I was getting ready for bed? And most importantly, how was I supposed to know that the central air vent in our living room, a custom system he'd designed himself, connected directly to the master bathroom in a way that carried every single syllable, every giggle, every word, up to him with perfect, crystal clarity? The irony is not lost on me. The man who built his empire on the science of sound had his marriage destroyed by it. By the time my friends left around midnight, I was feeling fantastic. I floated around the living room, collecting empty glasses, my head full of wine and the warm affirmation of female friendship. I turned to head into the kitchen and nearly jumped out of my skin. Julian was standing in the doorway. He was still in his travel clothes, a wrinkled polo shirt and slacks. His suitcase was on the floor beside him. But it was his expression that made the blood drain from my face. It wasn't anger. I almost wish it had been anger. Anger is loud, you can fight with it. This was a terrible, quiet hurt. He looked at me as if I had physically stabbed him. And in that moment, I knew. He had heard. Everything. Did you have a good time? He asked. His voice was eerily calm, devoid of any emotion. It was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I tried to play it cool. Yeah, just a girls' night. When did you get back? I thought you were in Chicago until Sunday. Client had an emergency. Session was canceled. His answers were clipped, each word precise. I got home around 9. 9. My mind raced back. At 9, we were deep into the game. At 9, I was midway through my rant about him being a 5.5. At 9, I had laughed about settling for stability over passion. My mouth went dry. Did you hear us from the bathroom? I whispered. His eyes, which had been staring at a point somewhere over my shoulder, finally focused on me. They were filled with a profound, soul-deep disappointment. Every word, Alara, especially the part about me being a 5 who pays for everything. A nervous, high-pitched laugh escaped my lips. Oh my God, Julian, it was just stupid girl talk. You know how we get when we're together. We exaggerate everything for laughs. It didn't mean anything. Do I look like I'm laughing? I felt a flash of defensiveness. The best defense is a good offense, right? Were you spying on me? That's really creepy, you know. He actually looked genuinely confused by the accusation. Spying? I came home to my own house and took a shower. The vent system I installed, the one you told me was unnecessary and pretentious when I explained how it would enhance sound circulation, carried your voice upstairs. I felt trapped. My fuzzy wine brain was scrambling for an escape route, an excuse, anything. You're overreacting. Everyone talks about their partners with their friends. It's normal. His face hardened. Did you mean it? Am I really just an ATM with a pulse to you? Of course not, I love you. I stepped toward him, my hands outstretched, but he flinched back as if I were a hot iron. That's not what you said to your friends. You said, and I quote, "Sure, his job is as boring as watching paint dry, but the direct deposits are regular, so I make it work." Entry. The way he repeated my own words back to me, stripped of their drunken, giggly context, made them sound monstrous. My defensiveness curdled into anger. Why was he making such a huge deal out of this? It was a joke, Julian. Joke, learn to take one. He rubbed his temples, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was stressed. Jokes are supposed to be funny, Alara. You know what's not funny? Realizing that the woman you've built your life with sees you as nothing but a meal ticket. Oh. He turned and started walking toward the stairs. Where are you going? I called after him, my voice rising in panic. He paused at the bottom step, his back still to me. Guest room. I can't look at you right now. I went to bed alone that night, annoyed at how sensitive he was being. He was just sulking. By morning, he'd realize how ridiculous he was being, and things would go back to normal. Men always got upset over nothing, and then forgot about it after a good night's sleep. This would all blow over by breakfast. I had never been more wrong in my life. When I woke up the next morning, the space beside me in our California king bed was cold. Julian had already left for work. No note, no text. I told myself he was still pouting and just needed some space. I went about my day, a trip to the gym, lunch with a friend, a short shift at the boutique, but a knot of unease was tightening in my stomach. He didn't come home for dinner. I texted him. No reply. I called. Straight to voicemail. By the third day of this silent treatment, my unease had morphed into a furious, indignant rage. How dare he punish me like this over one stupid, drunken comment? On the fourth day, he finally came home. But the Julian who walked through our front door wasn't the same man who had left for Chicago. A coldness had settled over him, extinguishing the warmth I had always taken for granted. He walked straight past me toward his home office without a word. I followed him, ready for the fight I'd been rehearsing for days. So, this is your mature response? The silent treatment for almost a week? Really, Julian? He looked up from his laptop, his eyes as dead as I'd ever seen them. I've been staying at a hotel while I figured out what to do, he said, his voice flat. I've made my decision. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. What are you talking about? I've spent the past few days reviewing our life together, Alara. He spoke with the detached precision of a scientist observing a specimen. The patterns were always there, but I chose to ignore them. How you only ever light up when I buy you something, but your eyes glaze over when I talk about my work. How you introduce me to people by what I do, never by who I am. How you're suddenly affectionate right after I give you your monthly spending money, but always too tired when I just need to talk. That's not fair, I protested, but my voice was weak. He continued as if I hadn't spoken. I hired a lawyer yesterday. I'm filing for divorce. The word hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. Divorce. It felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water in my face. Divorce? Over one stupid girl's night comment? Are you insane? It wasn't one comment, Alara, he said, standing up. It was the truth, finally coming out into the open. It was the one sound in this perfectly engineered house that I could no longer ignore. Enter. He walked to his desk and picked up a manila envelope. I've transferred what is legally your portion of our joint account to a new account solely in your name. It should be enough to get you set up somewhere else. Set up somewhere else? This is my house too. Actually, it's not, he said calmly. The house is in my name. You insisted on it, remember? When we bought it, you said you didn't want to be responsible for the mortgage if things went south. Your words. My blood ran cold. I had said that. I thought I was being clever, protecting myself. I never imagined it would be used against me like this. You have 2 weeks to find another place to live, he said, his voice flat and final. I'll be at the hotel until then. As he walked past me, I grabbed his arm, my nails digging into his sleeve. Julian, please. This is crazy. We can work this out. We can go to therapy. Oh, for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of the old Julian in his eyes, the one who could never say no to me, the one who would do anything to make me happy. But then his expression hardened again, like a shutter closing. There's nothing to work out, he said, gently removing my hand from his arm. You showed me who you really are, Alara, and for the first time in 6 years, I believe you. After Julian left, I sat in his office for hours, the silence of the house pressing in on me. How had a few careless, wine-fueled words spiraled into this? This wasn't happening. It was a nightmare he was scripting to punish me. He'd come to his senses. I called Sloane first, my voice choked with sobs. He's divorcing me. Over what we said during girls' night. There was an uncomfortable pause on the other end of the line. Alara, she said hesitantly. To be fair, you said some pretty harsh things. Things no one should ever say about someone they claim to love. I was stunned. So you're taking his side? I'm not taking sides, she said quickly. But maybe you should think about how he feels. I hung up on her. Some friend she was. I called Quinn next, then Anya. The conversations were distressingly similar. Sympathy, yes, but tinged with a clear sentiment that I had crossed a line. Apparently, in the story of my own life, everyone thought I was the villain. Fine. If Julian wanted to blow up our marriage over this, I'd make him regret it. I'd fight him for every single penny. I'd show him what it felt like to be disrespected. My first move was to secure my resources. I went to the safe in our closet where we kept emergency cash and important documents. It was empty. My heart started to race. I logged into our joint bank accounts online. All of them had been emptied, except for the new account Julian had mentioned. It held exactly 3 months' worth of my usual spending money, a generous sum for most people, but not nearly enough to hire the kind of shark lawyer I'd need to take him for everything he was worth. He had outmaneuvered me at every turn. The next day, the official divorce papers arrived by courier. No-fault divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. His offer was brutally simple. I would get the money in the new account and nothing more. No spousal support. His lawyer's letter coolly explained that given the short duration of our marriage, my age, and my employable status, the court would likely not award long-term alimony. Attached to the papers was a copy of the prenuptial agreement I'd breezily signed years ago, thinking it was just to protect my future inheritance from my parents. I'd never realized that its clauses also severely limited what I could claim from his assets and his booming business. It was really happening, and I had no way to stop it. Over the next 2 weeks, I descended into a state of frantic desperation. I tried everything. I cooked his favorite meals and left them in the fridge. I bought a ridiculously expensive new dress and sent him a picture. I left tearful, rambling voicemails, alternating between begging and yelling. I even wrote a long letter, apologizing for hurting his feelings, though I still privately believed he was being 1,000 times more hurtful in his reaction. Nothing worked. It was like he had simply been erased, replaced by a cold, polite stranger who only communicated through his lawyer. The few times he came to the house to pack some of his things, he moved with a quiet efficiency, his eyes looking through me as if I were a ghost haunting the halls of our once perfect home. The prenup was ironclad. My claim to his business, his retirement accounts, the house, it was all gone. Everything I had grown accustomed to, the very foundation of my identity, was slipping through my fingers. All because of one stupid girl's night. 14 days after he dropped the divorce bomb, my time was up. I'd found a tiny, one-bedroom apartment in a part of town I used to drive through with my doors locked. My salary from the boutique could barely cover the rent. My parents, after a lecture about learning some responsibility, refused to help financially. My friends offered sympathy, but not much else. The day I moved out was the most humiliating day of my life. As I carried my last suitcase out the front door, Julian was there, watching from the doorway. It was the first time he'd spoken directly to me in 2 weeks. "I've had all the locks changed," he said, his voice neutral. "The security code has been updated too." I stopped and looked back at our beautiful house. I saw the custom kitchen I'd helped design, the sprawling backyard where we'd once talked about building a pool, the entryway where he had carried me over the threshold 4 years ago, laughing. "This is insane," I said, tears finally welling in my eyes. "You are throwing away our entire marriage over something so small." Julian just shook his head slowly. "No, Alara, you threw it away. I'm just the one cleaning up the mess." "No." As I drove to my new apartment, a depressing little box with paper-thin walls and noisy neighbors, reality finally hit me with the force of a physical blow. I had lost everything because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. Because I'd taken the comfortable, beautiful life Julian provided completely for granted. Because I'd forgotten the cardinal rule of being with a provider: never, ever let them know that's all you see them as. My new place was an acoustic nightmare. It was a constant cacophony, a cruel parody of the sound-perfect environment Julian had meticulously created in our home. The neighbors on one side fought constantly, their shrill voices cutting through the walls with painful clarity. The pipes clanged and groaned at all hours. The refrigerator hummed at an irritatingly off-key frequency. And worst of all, a constant, dull bass thump from the apartment above made it impossible to sleep. Sound pollution, I muttered to myself one night, covering my head with a pillow. I remembered how Julian would have identified and fixed each acoustic issue with the focused excitement of a master craftsman. I'd always rolled my eyes at his passionate explanations. Now, I would have given anything for his expertise. My first month's rent nearly wiped out the last of my funds. I had to increase my hours at the boutique until my feet ached, but it still wasn't enough. I swallowed my pride and started driving for a rideshare company on weekends, coming home exhausted to my noisy apartment, too tired even to cry. I kept tabs on Julian through the carefully curated window of social media. His business was thriving. He'd landed a massive contract designing the acoustics for a major symphony hall in New York, the kind of legacy project he'd always dreamed about. There were photos of him at industry events, looking happier and more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. And thinner. Definitely thinner. 3 months after moving out, I hit rock bottom. My car, the Lexus Julian had bought me for our second anniversary, was repossessed in the middle of the night. My credit cards were maxed out. I couldn't afford both rent and food. So, with my tail between my legs, I moved in with my sister, sleeping on her couch, and earning my keep by helping with her kids. That's when I saw it. A photo on Instagram, posted by a woman I'd never seen before. It was a picture of her and Julian, smiling, at a black tie event. He had his arm around her. The woman, whose name was Clara, was nothing special, looks-wise. Kind of plain, actually, with glasses and unruly curly hair. But the caption was a dagger to my heart. With this amazing man at the Wagner Hall opening. So proud of your incredible acoustic design that's being called revolutionary by the press. You are a true genius, Julian. Proud. She was proud of him. Actually proud of his work, not just what it could buy her. And the way he was looking at her in the photo, it was a look of genuine, unguarded affection. He had never looked at me like that. I closed the app and threw my phone across the room, where it narrowly missed my nephew's fish tank. My sister came into the room, drawn by the sound of the phone clattering against the wall. She surveyed the scene me, crumpled on the couch, tears streaming down my face, and sat down beside me with a weary sigh. Are you ever going to admit that you messed up? She asked gently. I didn't deserve this, I insisted, my voice thick with resentment. One comment shouldn't erase 6 years. It wasn't just one comment though, was it, Alara? She gave me that big sister look, the one that always made me feel about 10 years old. It was what that comment revealed. Be honest with yourself. Did you ever really appreciate him? Not his wallet, but him? I wanted to argue, to scream that she didn't understand. But the fight had gone out of me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had taken Julian for granted. But didn't everyone do that in long-term relationships sometimes? Did I really deserve to lose my entire world over it? As I look back now, crammed on this lumpy couch with my sister's cat, to whom I am definitely allergic, purring on my chest, I still don't think the punishment fit the crime. Yes, I said some things I shouldn't have. Yes, maybe I was more in love with Julian's ability to provide than with Julian himself. But he could have talked to me. We could have gone to counseling. He didn't have to pull the rug out from under my entire life with such cold, calculated precision. The worst part is, sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I catch myself missing him. Not the things he bought me or the lifestyle he provided, but him. The way his eyes would light up when he explained the acoustics in a restaurant. How he would create these incredible sound experiences in our home theater for our date nights. The steady, comforting way he would hold me when I'd had a bad day. But then I remember how easily he discarded me, how cold and clinical he was at the end, and the hurt hardens back into resentment. I'm the victim here. I'm the one sleeping on a couch while he's dating some new woman and living his best life in our beautiful, sound-perfect home. One stupid comment, and now I'm effectively homeless. If that's not an overreaction, I don't know what island. Yet, sometimes, in my most honest, unguarded moments, a tiny voice whispers in the back of my mind. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, I didn't lose everything over one stupid comment. Maybe I lost it because that one comment was the most honest thing I'd said in our entire marriage. And maybe I got exactly what I deserved. But I quickly silenced that voice. It sounds too much like Julian's.